What's up, Lore Masters? In the last episode, we discussed the love affairs of McCoy and how aliens who pose as women will kill you. Today, let's break down teenage angst. In the original series episode, Charlie X, we start with the Enterprise rendezvousing with a transport that was apparently able to save a young man, namely Charlie Evans. Charlie apparently survived a crash at a young age and was able to learn to talk by looking at microtapes and survive by foraging for food on the planet. The transport captain and navigator talk about how marvelous Charlie is and insist that the Enterprise take him on board. Kirk offers them entertainment and food before they leave, but the captain of the transport insists that Charlie was great, but they really should be on their way. They got things they have to do. So, one side wanting to take good care of a child and the other claiming to be very fond of the kid, but really just wants to get rid of him as soon as possible so that they can live their life. Man, if there is a better allegory for divorce with kids, I don't know it. Charlie constantly interrupts during the initial conversations with the transport captain, Kirk telling him that interrupting like that is wrong. After this, they have Charlie go to the medical bay, the doctor conducting a medical exam on him to ensure that everything is fine. During this time, the kid would talk about how he knows he wasn't even liked by the others on the other ship. Insert another divorce joke here. McCoy comforts the team and shows him to his quarters. Though, I guess immediately after that, Charlie would leave and begin exploring the Enterprise, bugging the crew. 'Cause God forbid there actually be security, I guess. Being 17, he gravitates to the nearest blonde that he can find, in this case, Yeoman Rand, and offers her a present, one that wouldn't be available in the ship's stores apparently. It's green. Another interesting bit is, with no explanation how or why, the woman would also know his name. Oh wait, I can't show plot holes, that's wrong, sorry guys. The gift giving appears to have worked some magic as the clearly adult woman asks the clearly minor man to meet her in Recreation Room 6 on Deck 3 after work. Charlie answers this offer with a firm slap to the rear, and the yeoman is taken aback and tells him not to do it, and if he wants to know why, he needs to talk to Kirk or McCoy. We then see a conversation between Spock, McCoy, and Kirk, though Uhura is on the bridge as well. Kirk orders McCoy to talk to the boy about sex, the captain apparently being uncomfortable with it. Oh, the irony. The next scene shows Spock smiling and flirting with women, even though we know he doesn't do any of that, and it would mean that Spock smiling, even laughing with number one in Discovery would be considered actually legit, and people just haven't watched the original series and jump on a bandwagon without knowing what they're talking about. But that couldn't be possible, so I guess this scene never existed. Oh, this happens in episode 3 of the original series, by the way. Or episode 2, depending on how you look at the original series. Anyway, it's early. Though, that wouldn't be the main problem with the scene. Uhura would begin singing, and when Charlie makes his way in, the communication officer begins to sing a very sexually suggestive message to the 17-year-old about being with Yeoman Rand. To clarify, a senior officer who was on the bridge and likely knows the young man was very inappropriate with this junior officer would encourage him to continue being this way with her. Just fantastic. Though we wouldn't get to see how far Uhura would push the envelope as Charlie uses some power on her, causing her to choke. He would then do some magic tricks with cards for the woman he is going after, where he produces pictures of her in various poses, and then somehow makes a card magically appear in her bra. I'm not making this stuff up, this is literally in the episode. We find out later that the Enterprise is celebrating the day of Thanksgiving. While I could make some jokes about the United States basically owning the Federation at this point, it's possible a specific day of Thanksgiving was adopted as multiple countries do celebrate such a festival, indeed possibly other planets as well. During this time, Charlie asks Kirk why he shouldn't sexually assault the woman, which is a fair question given the encouragement of the communications officer. Kirk doesn't know how to tell him it's not okay to hit a woman on the rear. In fact, the captain would state that it's okay with men. That's one thing, to hit men on the rear, but when it came to a woman, he couldn't find the words. Which joke to go with? Promiscuous Kirk not knowing when it's right to hit a woman on the rear, or Kirk hiding his feelings for other men? So much twine, so little time. We wouldn't have long to think on it though, as the Antares would try to send a warning to the Enterprise, but would suddenly be destroyed. Of course, a ship all of a sudden exploding, and Charlie acting very weird, giving us some indication that he might be to blame. Captain Kirk would of course simply report its destruction and not investigate. Also, the galleys would report that while they were about to serve synthetic meatloaf to the crew, actual turkeys appear in the place of where the meatloaf was in the oven. I'm assuming that the turkeys were already dead and ready to be cooked. This would cause a giggle out of Charlie, and again, things would continue to seem odd. An interesting thing occurs here. Yumin Rands, the blonde he's been after, would try to hook him up with someone she describes as quote-unquote his own age. I suppose this would mean that men and women are allowed to serve as early as 17. The logical conclusion of that meaning that during the original series, you could have kids joining Starfleet Academy as early as 13. That's assuming we do see a 4-year Academy stint that we see in The Next Generation. Even if this was a cadet cruise for the young woman, that would still place her at 14 or 15 when she applied. Though I guess Wesley did go in around that age, so it kind of makes sense. Ultimately, Charlie would rebuff her attempts to get him with someone else, even insulting the young woman. The boy would insist that he be with the Yeoman herself and would accept no one else. The Yeoman would tell Kirk that he needs to do something about this before she is forced to hurt the feelings of Charlie. Kirk would attempt to help the teen by teaching him how to fight, but during this time, a man would laugh at the boy, and that man would immediately be sent to nowhere. He would disappear. Charlie would also remove all phasers on the ship. It wouldn't stop there, though, as things would continue to escalate. The woman, who the communications officer encouraged Charlie to sexually go after, would ultimately reject the team. The human would be zapped out of existence for this transgression, and Charlie would begin to terrorize the crew, causing some to grow old, with others having their faces disappear and more. Kirk would attempt preventing the ship from getting to Colony 5, doing this in order to stop Charlie from getting anywhere close to other civilizations. Unfortunately, it would turn out, like most other episodes, Charlie would have powers of the gods that Kirk couldn't overcome. There would ultimately be a back and forth between Charlie and Kirk, with Charlie ultimately taking over completely and not listening to the captain anymore. The captain would come up with the idea to turn on all the systems on the ship to make it harder for Charlie to control everything, and Kirk himself would attempt to distract the boy while the doctor attempted to sedate him. James T. Kirk would challenge Charlie, and the boy would try to keep the ship under control while fighting the captain. This would go nowhere, though, when another ship appears with an alien life form contacting them. The aliens would return ship control back to the captain and bring back all of the people that Charlie had destroyed. They would advise Kirk that Charlie had escaped without their notice and that they had brought him back to life with their powers when the ship was destroyed. The young man would promise not to cause any more trouble if he could stay with Kirk. While I have been giving this episode a hard time, it was obviously done during the 60s and is a product of its time. I don't really have any qualms with it other than the subtle jokes I've been making. I will say this, though. There was one misstep that was made and probably should have been the focus here. Instead of doing a teenage angst story, they should have done one about a kid who can never return home. In the end, Charlie wants to be with his people, and Kirk even stands up for him, saying that Charlie should be with his own kind. I think if they had cut most of the episode out, especially Uhura's song, and more focused on this dilemma, it would have been a stronger episode. But alas, that wasn't meant to be, as Charlie talks about how he can't relate with his, captors, and they don't experience the emotions he does. And then he is removed from the ship, and Kirk apparently doesn't ask any questions, just taking the aliens at their word and keeping it moving. As you do. This episode was something else. It didn't add a lot to the mythos, but gave an interesting view into the day of the Enterprise. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.